You're wondering, it is always military defense spending that gets us these weird fringe sciences that push the limits of what's possible. This was especially true when you had an entire country willing to do whatever it took to outwit the Soviets in the Cold War. Anyway, the purpose of the study was, quote, to test the feasibility of designing a close-coupled two-way communication link between man and computer, using biological information from muscles of the vocal apparatus and the electrical activity of the brain during overt and covert speech, end quote. So to break that down into ordinary English, the thinking is that our brain has two ways of delivering words: overt speech, speaking out loud, and covert speech, which is thinking to yourself. The idea is that even when you're not opening your mouth to say words, simply thinking a sentence to yourself will activate the parts of your brain that process speech and language, just as if you had actually opened your mouth and spoken those words aloud. And these brain signals can then be read and translated and acted upon by a machine. In short, you could think thoughts to a computer instead of saying them out loud. And they weren't wrong in their thinking around this. The study found that the electroencephalography readouts, or EEG readouts, which measure electrical impulses in different parts of the brain, for overt speech actually matched up with the ones for covert speech. Now, granted, the results were far from perfect. One source of error was that if subjects were distracted or had a twitchy eye, the signals from the brain telling the eyes to move would interfere with the signals for the speech. But according to the report, once you accounted for those errors, the match between what the machine read out and what people were actually thinking ranged from 52% to 72%. Now, those numbers might not sound all that high, but think about what that's saying. You've got what is essentially a mind-reading robot that's as much as 72% accurate. That is pretty darn impressive. And that was way back in the 1970s. And in case you needed any more evidence that Hero's dream of neurobots that can react to your thoughts might one day be a reality, see this headline from September of 2018. Yeah, the year that we are currently in, and a month ago, stating that it's now possible to telepathically communicate with a drone swarm. Now, there are a lot of caveats here, the main one being that it's done via a chip that has to be surgically implanted into the brain. This isn't just some headband that you're gonna slap onto your forehead and take off at will, but